ঠিক আছে, জাস্ট এইটার জন্য। নমস্কার সম্রাট।
Please maintain silence until the arati is over. प्रभु तुमितम भंजनः नमो नमो प्रभु भाग्यमनादित नमो नमो प्रभु भाग्यमनादित मन वचनैकाधा
Swami Ramakrishna Maharaj Ki Jai.
Ja, ik was kunnen.
This is not giving any sound. It's giving some hum.
He's turning it on. Narayan. Swami.
Well, I can shout.
No?
Oh, oh,
Some change? Some change?
Maybe it's the microphone. Maybe the microphone doesn't like us.
Oh, there's another mic.
Okay. All right. Here we go. It's okay. We don't need. I don't think I don't need to watch it. It's kind of in the way. No, if we put it down here, just in case I need it. Oh. Good. So let's start. Welcome to all of you. I'm welcoming you, though I'm the one who's visiting. But that's because I always feel like this is my place also. This is a beautiful center and a beautiful community of seekers. And today is of course, every day is a holy day, because every day is unfolding within the infinite divine reality. But today we especially observe the birthday of Swami Ramakrishnananda, one of Sri Ramakrishna's intimate disciples who became a monk of the order and one of the founding monks of the order, brother disciple of Swami Vivekananda. And so I'll start this evening's talk with a prayer of salutation written by Swami Ramakrishnananda for his brother disciple whom he revered as a guru almost, Swami Vivekananda. Anitya drishyeshu vivicya nityam tasmin samadhata ihasmalilaya viveka vairagya vishuddha chittam yosau viveki tamaham namami viveka jananda nimagna chittam viveka danaika vinoda shilam viveka bhasa kamaniya kantim vivekinam tam satatam namami. To him who, sifting out the eternal from the transitory phenomena of this world, made it his sport to concentrate thereon his mind, purified by discernment and renunciation, to that discerning soul do I salute. That one who is practicing Viveka, to him whose mind was immersed in the bliss that comes of Viveka, whose nature delighted solely in kindling Viveka in others, and whose beauty was made winsome by the glow of Viveka, to that discerning soul my salutations ever go. There's 4 more verses, so we'll leave it at that. And we see how much Swami Ramakrishnananda revered Swami Vivekananda and loved him so deeply. It's interesting that actually the two of them had quite different natures. Swami Vivekananda was a man with a message for the world, the divinity of the soul, awakening of India, and the harmony of religions. Swami Ramakrishnananda had a smaller message, but he also had a message. What his message is may be a little more difficult for us to say, but he himself said, you know, Swami Vivekananda had a big message for the world, but we too have our own small message. And perhaps his lasting contribution to our movement is the practice of the worship of Sri Ramakrishna. Because when Sri Ramakrishna left his body and his remains were cremated, those remains were gathered up, the cremated remains, bones and ashes and whatever, and placed in an urn, and immediately Swami Ramakrishnananda took up the daily service of Sri Ramakrishna. As he had been serving him while he was in the body, he took that up with tremendous zeal and steadfastness. And he was the only one among the brethren who stayed the whole time at the monastery, didn't go anywhere. His whole purpose was to serve Sri Ramakrishna, who he felt to be still living. And so that tradition has passed down to us. And so in almost all the centers of the Ramakrishna mission, Ramakrishna Math mission, the daily worship of Sri Ramakrishna is performed, feeling him to be still a living presence. And I think we feel, especially when we enter a temple where the worship is done regularly and carefully, we do feel that living presence. And that is a wonderful contribution of Swami Ramakrishnananda. There's also an interesting tussle between the two of them, Swami Vivekananda and Swami Ramakrishnananda, because Swami Vivekananda was very afraid of this ritual worship, this formal worship, because he was afraid that the whole movement would be reduced to just a temple. As is Dijudas still here? There you
Yes.
are. As a Hindu temple. He was very afraid that lest this movement just become like a temple where people go to worship and pray and get their prayers answered, and that's all. Whereas Swami Vivekananda knew that Sri Ramakrishna had come for a much greater purpose than just having some temples in his name. So Swami Ramakrishna, coming from a very orthodox Hindu family, he could do endless hours of worship and puja and bell, as Swami Vivekananda, that bell ringing, no? The bell is ringing all the time. And so he scolded him many times. He said, "Oh, to stop all that worship, throw your worship implements, all these special implements that we have here, these copper in the Koshakushi. He would say, throw that Koshakushi into the Ganga and worship the living God who is before you, in the suffering, in the poor, in the uneducated. Worship them. So he tried, and but Swami Ramakrishna was not willing to give up the worship altogether. He continued it. And so there was this kind of tension between them. At the same time, and this I've learned recently from the new edition of the Letters of Swami Vivekananda, which has just come out in 4 volumes, the complete Letters of Swami Vivekananda, practically unexpurgated. In the original published letters, there's many parts left out. And so here I'm reading new things that Swami Vivekananda is writing, and it turns out that he wrote to the other brothers that I have faith only in Shashi. That'd be Swami Ramakrishnananda. He was the most steadfast. He's the one that Swamiji felt he could rely on. He was in America, spreading Vedanta in America, and yet also conducting the work in India, guiding the brothers. And Swami Ramakrishnananda was the one he felt he could depend on as his rock there at the Baranapur Mutt and then afterwards the Alambazar Mutt. He could depend on Shashi Maharaj. So the foundation of this order rests actually on his dedication and his steadfastness at the first monasteries, where he was the only one who would be there all the time. And he was so dedicated to his brothers that in the early days the brothers would all be lost in meditation, and he would feed them. He would make an offering for Sri Ramakrishna, and then he would pull the brothers out of their meditation and make them eat. So his contribution is tremendous. And then, though he had never left the monastery, when Swami Vivekananda came back from America and England from the West, he came first to Colombo and then to Madras, South India, Rameshwaram, and then Madras, now Chennai, and moved his way up through India, going all the way to Almora. He told the Madras devotees, some of his staunchest followers who had supported him all along and done tremendous work, he told them, I will send you one who is more orthodox than your most orthodox. The Madrasis were particularly known for being very orthodox in their practice and in their rituals and all that. So he sent them Shashi Maharaj. And he asked Swami Ramakrishnananda, you go to Madras. And he went. After not leaving the monastery for all those years, from 1886 to 1897, for 11 years he did not leave the monastery. He went, he dropped everything, dropped the worship, and went to Madras. There, of course, he started the worship also. He set up a shrine there. And he felt that Sri Ramakrishna was a living presence there. So much so that one night he was so hot he couldn't sleep. Chennai, of course, Madras, the temperature is said to be the three temperatures in Madras: hot, hotter, and hottest. So one night he couldn't sleep. What did he do? He got up, got a fan, and stood by the shrine, fanning Sri Ramakrishna's image all night long. That was how living Sri Ramakrishna had become for him. And in the meantime, Swami Vivekananda was in Calcutta at the monastery, and he wrote a letter to Shashi Maharaj about the worship performed at the Sri Ramakrishna's birthday celebration, and he said, you would be aghast to know how many of your klings and pats we have trimmed from your puja. These are some of the mantras chanted in are like kling and pat, are some of the little mantras which are chanted during puja. And Swamiji jokingly, of course, said, we have cut so many of those from your puja. So, but that puja tradition continues, thanks to Swami Ramakrishnanda. And Swami Vivekananda acknowledged it also. But he pointed out that Sri Ramakrishna never instructed any of his disciples to worship him. It is we, I mean Swami Vivekananda and his other disciples, who have chosen to do so out of our own devotion. He never told us to do so. Only to a few close disciples, he did instruct us to meditate on his form. So Sri Ramakrishna apparently knew that his form would be widely worshipped. And about this photograph, he said it will be worshipped from home to home. The expression is from home to home. In so many homes it will be worshipped. And it's interesting, his prediction is coming true. It's how many places, in how many places this photograph is venerated as an image of what he said was a very high spiritual state of absorption in the infinite divinity, the infinite reality. So, Swami Vivekananda had a different method of worship. He didn't use any rituals. When he performed the worship a few times, he would perform worship at Belur Mutt. He would enter the shrine and enter into deep, deep meditation. And he would meditate for an hour. Then he would come out of that meditation, offer handfuls of flowers at the feet of Sri Ramakrishna, and that was the worship. None of all these complex rituals are for us who aren't able to dive into that deep meditation. But for him, he didn't need all of that. He could just, his worship was mainly meditation. So that brings us to, in a sense, we can let that lead into our topic, which is the topic of Swami Vivekananda and Shiva, and Lord Shiva. As many people know, now I'm looking for my notes. Swami Vivekananda, Lord Shiva is, you can say, at least in the, has two aspects, the aspect of meditation and the aspect of dance. But we can think first of the aspect of Shiva in deep meditation, in the Himalayas, in Mount Kailash, plunged in the deepest samadhi. And this is kind of how we see this image of this most famous, or one of the most famous images of Sri Ramakrishna, of Swami Vivekananda, where he's plunged in samadhi, in deep meditation. In fact, the meditation verses on Shiva that we use in puja, in our puja, describe Shiva like this. It's a beautiful description and instruction for us to meditate on Shiva. Om Hyayim Nityam Mahesham Rachata Girnibham Charu Chandravatam Sam Ratnakalpo Jalangam Parushamirgavaradhiti Hastam Pratannam Padmasinam Samantat Stuto Marganer Vyagrakritim Vasanam Vishwadyam Vishwabijam Nikila Bhayaram Panchavatram Trinetram. Meditate eternally on Maheshwara, the great Lord, resplendent like the silver mountain, beautifully adorned with the crescent moon, whose radiant limbs shine like jewels, holding the axe, representing discernment and renunciation, holding the deer, representing mastery over the mind, the deer being the restless mind, offering gestures of granting boons and fearlessness, and ever serene and gracious, seated in the lotus posture, praised from all directions by the hosts of gods, clad in a tiger skin, the first cause, the seed of the universe, the destroyer of all fear, the five-faced one, the three-eyed Lord. So this describes a radiant form of Lord Shiva amidst the mountains, and ever gracious, the very embodiment of peace and meditation. Contrast this with the song on Shiva that Swami Vivekananda himself composed for Shivaratri in 1887. The brothers of the Bharanagore monastery were going to celebrate Shivaratri, that austere night of Shiva when people fast for 24 hours oftentimes. The most austere amongst them won't even take a drop of water. And they observe 4 watches through the night of 4 separate times they worship Shiva. And Shiva is most easy to please. His worship, if you just pour a little Ganges water and offer some leaves, Shiva will be pleased. But no, since Swami Ramakrishna was there, surely it was a little bit more complex than that, their worship. But so, it's interesting that in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the recorder of the Gospel records that he visited the Bharanagore monastery after Sri Ramakrishna had left the body, and finds Tara, the future Swami Shivananda. When he sees M, he starts to sing this song. And then Swami Brahmananda, Rakhal is there, and he joins him in singing this song, which Swami Vivekananda had just composed for the occasion. Ta 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 thoya nache bhola, ta thoya nache bhola, bom bom bajega, bom bom bajega, dimmi 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 damaru baje, dimmi 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 damaru baje, dulice kopalama, dulice kopalama, garaje ganga jata maje, ugare anala trishula raje, dhakka 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 mali bandha, dhakka 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 mali bandha, jwale shashanka bhav, jwale shashanka bhav. So this is a song about Bholanath, Shiva dancing, and the tataya are some of the words indicating this dance, this beautiful dance. He's dancing, and bom bo bajigal. He's playing his cheeks, going bom 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 with his thumbs, and his damaru is that drum, the two-headed drum with the little ball. So when you do it, when you spin it like that, that dimmy dimmy dimmy, that's the sound of the damaru. The dimmy 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 goes his damaru, and his garland of skulls is swaying to and fro. The Ganga waters roar in his matted locks, and his trident rages fire. And dhaka 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 is bouncing his crested topknot. His matted locks are gathered into a topknot, and they're bouncing on the top of his head, going dhaka dhaka dhaka, and the moon is brightly shining on his forehead. So this is a different vision of Shiva as the dancer, the cosmic dancer. It's the whose dance manifests this cosmos and again destroys it. So we have this dual vision of Shiva as, on the one hand, eternally immersed in meditation, the very ground of existence, and again Shiva, so Shiva the yogi, the ever-moving force that manifests, the eternal, unchanging consciousness behind all things, Shiva the yogi, and Shiva the dancer, the ever-moving force that manifests the universe. So, Shivaratri also encompasses both these aspects. People meditate, they repeat the mantra, the Om Namah Shivaya, all night long. And yet, they also dance. They sing these songs of Shiva, and they dance. And at Biramat, it's quite an affair where the whole temple is full of monks and devotees, and then one of the young novices is dressed as Lord Shiva. And two of his attendants are also dressed in the same dress with the matted locks and the tiger skin and the damaru and the trident, and he comes dancing in the hall back and forth. To this song is one of the songs that they sing. Tremendous. So this dual aspect of Shiva we find at manifesting at Shivaratri, and also, if we think about it, manifesting also in the life of Swami Vivekananda. On the one hand, he was a perfected yogi. He was perfect in meditation. From his young childhood, he could become absorbed in meditation. This photograph was taken. It is said that they wanted to take his photograph, and so he went into, he was sitting in the Padmasana, the lotus pose, with his legs covered by his robe, and he simply plunged into meditation, deep meditation, and then the photograph was taken. And they had a hard time bringing him out of that meditation. So he was, on the one hand, deeply meditative. He had this power, tremendous power of meditation. And at the same time, look what he did. How he came to the West, traveled all over the West, sometimes lecturing in the morning in one city and in the evening in another city, having taken the train from hundreds of miles one place to another, and fighting with missionaries, and fighting against the bigotry of the missionaries, and fighting against the prevailing ideas of sin, that human beings are sinners, and all of that, breaking that, and fighting against the exclusivity of religion, and ushering in a new age when people recognize the harmony of religions, that different religions are but different paths to manifesting our own divinity. And at the same time, doing that here in the West, in India, charging his brothers and his disciples and his devotees to work for the uplift of the Indian people and to worship the living God. Forget your worship in the temple, worship the living God, the suffering people down in ignorance, pushed down by centuries of foreign rule and suffering in ignorance, without education, without even the means of livelihood, without oftentimes enough food. So what an activity. So we see here these two aspects of Lord Shiva in Swami Vivekananda. There's a story now I will tell of the old India. I will read this from the life of Swami Vivekananda. The story of the old India. Swami Vivekananda himself used this term he said, the India of prayers and tears, of vigils and fasts, that is passing away, never to return. He said this in connection with Golapma. He sent Sister Nivedita to see, not Golapma, Gopala's mother, the lady who was the lifelong widow and worshipper of Gopal and had the vision of Gopal, became a God-realized saint through her worship of Gopal and the blessings of Sri Ramakrishna. The India of prayers and tears, of vigils and fasts that is passing away, never to return. So this is from the life of Vivekananda. Whosoever knows the longing of a mother that a son shall be born to her, enters into the world where lived Bhuvaneshwari Datta, the wife of Vishwanath Datta and the future mother of Swami Vivekananda. In common with mothers the world over, she longed for a son to carry on the family tradition, to be the link forged out of the materials of love and suffering between the future and the past. As she went about her daily tasks, she prayed silently that her desire might be fulfilled. Now it was customary in those days, and still is, for one living a long distance from Varanasi who was in dire need, or desirous that some special event should come to pass, to make offerings and sacrifices to Shiva through any relatives and friends who might be residents of Varanasi. So Bhuvaneshwari Devi wrote to an old aunt of the Datta family in Varanasi to ask her to make the necessary offerings and prayers to Vireshwara Shiva, that a son might be born to her. Vireshwara Shiva is one of the smaller Shiva temples in Varanasi. It's kind of hidden. It's not, the Vishwanath temple is the main temple to Shiva. This is a smaller temple, but Varanasi is the city of Shiva, of course. She especially worshipped Vireshwara Shiva for a son. And she had a murti, an image of Shiva, in her own home also. This Vireshwara Shiva, the Lord of Heroes. So when word came that this was being done, she was content to wait in perfect assurance that the prayers would be answered. She spent her days in fasting and meditations, her whole soul given over to constant recollectedness, her entire heart fixed in love on the Lord Shiva. Often did her mind go to Varanasi, uniting in thought with the venerable aunt as she poured the sacred water of the Ganga on the symbol of the Most High, or as she worshipped him with flowers and mantras. One night, she had a vivid dream. She had spent the day in the shrine, and as evening deepened into night, she fell asleep, hushed in silence with the household, hushed in silence and rest. Then in the highest heavens the hour struck. The time was come for the saintly woman to touch the feet of the Lord. And in her dream she saw Lord Shiva arouse himself out of his transcendent meditation and take the form of a male child who was to be her own son. She awoke. Could this ocean of light in which she found herself bathed be but a dream? Shiva, Shiva, Thou fulfillest in various ways the prayers of thy devotees. From the inmost soul of Bhuvaneshwari Devi, a joyous prayer welled up, for she was confident that her long months of expectancy were over, and that the vision was but an announcement that her prayers were to be answered. Her faith was justified, and in due time her son was born. So that is the vision Bhuvaneshwari Devi, Swami Vivekananda's mother, had before he was born. She had a vision of Lord Shiva. So that is why she had the understanding, and there is this tradition that Swami Vivekananda is somehow deeply connected with Shiva. He is somehow a manifestation of Lord Shiva. So they called him Vireshwar, and his nickname became Bile, which is the Bengalicized nicknameified form of Vireshwar. Vireshwar because Vireshwar, Bile became Vireshwar became Bile. So his mother always called him Bile. But of course after he was given the formal name Narendranath. And interesting, Swami Vivekananda relates that he had a memory from early childhood. He had a memory that he would play at being a monk, renunciate, and clothed in ashes, with wearing only a loincloth. And he says that I felt that I also was this, and that for some mischief I had had to be sent away from Shiva. And then he reports, no doubt my family increased this feeling. For when I was naughty, and he was often naughty, he was filled with tremendous energy and restlessness, which afterwards manifested in his work. He says, when I was naughty, they would say, dear, dear, so many austerities, and yet Shiva sent us this demon instead of a good soul. So they would say like that. And then, or when I was very rebellious, he relates, they would empty a can of water over me, saying, Shiva, Shiva. And then, interesting, then I was all right, always. Even now, when I feel mischievous, that word keeps me straight. Shiva, Shiva. There's other interesting incidents that one day Mahapurush Maharaj, they were all living together in the Brahmanagar monastery, and they were all sleeping together. They had one or two giant mosquito curtains covering the whole area, and they would sleep under that on their little pads or whatever they had. And one night Mahapurush Maharaj, that time Tarak of course, Tarak Da, he woke up to find the room, there was a strange light in the room. He said one night he was sleeping near Swamiji, and Swami Ramakrishna and some others were there. He says, suddenly I woke up to find the inside of the whole mosquito curtain flooded with brilliant light. Swamiji had been by my side, but now I could not find him there. Instead, there slept a number of Shivas, a number of small Shivas, all of the age of 7 or 8 years, without clothes and white in color, their heads covered with matted hair. It was the light emanating from their bodies that lit up the place. As I looked on, I was dumbfounded. I would be dumbfounded. I could not understand anything at first. I thought it was a hallucination, so I rubbed my eyes and again looked at it. There slept the Shivas, sure enough, just as before. So he was in a fix. He didn't want to sleep and maybe accidentally touch the Lord Shiva lying there with his feet or something like that. So he spends the whole night in meditation. And in the morning, the day dawns, he finds Swamiji sleeping there just as before. So he tells Swamiji everything. Swami just laughed. He just laughed hearing everything. But interestingly, later, Mahapurush Maharaj was reading the hymn to Vireshwara Shiva. There's a hymn to Vireshwara Shiva in the Kashi Khanda, the scripture on Varanasi. And this describes exactly his vision. There's a verse describing the 8-year-old form of Shiva. Adorned with sacred ash, the child Shiva has the form of an 8-year-old, auspicious, without eyes as wide as coming all the way to the ears, and very red lips, with lovely, tawny, matted locks as a crown, naked with a smiling face, wearing ornaments befitting childhood and enchanting the heart. So this verse is there in the Kashikanda. I found the verse also. We've had enough Sanskrit verses probably. It starts out, Vibhuti Bhushitam, that means adorned with Vibhuti, with ash. Balam Ashta Varsha Kritim Shubham, with the child form of 8 years old. Like that, there's this verse describing his vision. So amazing. Swami Vivekananda often had the name of Shiva on his lips. He would say Shiva, Shiva. And the Western disciples noticed this. And the interesting, related by Sister Christine, that was Christina Greenstidle, one of Sri Ramakrishna's American disciples from Detroit, one of those who sought him out in the middle of the night and in the rain and came to see him in Thousand Island Park, going all the way from Detroit with Mrs. Funky, the two of them alone, never having met him personally, and came and asked to be his disciples, and he accepted them. So Christina Greenstidle afterwards came to India and served the work in India for many years. So she writes, there was a certain woman who was going about the country as a religious teacher, using Swami Vivekananda's name and reputation to get a following. And he was asked about this lady by some of the disciples, and she said, poor thing. She has a husband to support, and she must get a certain amount every month. But Swami, someone said, she claims to be authorized by you to prepare the students for your teaching. She says, if we go through her 2 preliminary classes, then we will be ready to be taught by you. It is so absurd and unscrupulous. To the first class, she gives a few gymnastic exercises, and to the second, she dictates some quotations or gems, which she has gathered from various books on occultism. Should she be allowed to mislead people, taking their money and using your name? So a complaint comes to Swamiji. She is using your name and doing that. All he said was, poor thing, Shiva, Shiva. With this Shiva, Shiva, he put the matter out of his mind. So that was his way of just putting it aside. Shiva, Shiva, poor thing. Somebody asked him once what he meant when he said Shiva, Shiva. One of the Westerners, of course. What do you mean when you say Shiva, Shiva? And he answered with a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. Shiver me timbers, ho, 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 and a bottle of rum. He's quoting from Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, which was written in published in 1883. So Swamiji had obviously read the book, or at least read in part of it, and that's a saying, shiver me timbers, ho, 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 and a bottle of rum, about the pirates in Treasure Island. So obviously he didn't want to, obviously Shiva, Shiva was something very personal and intimate, and he's not going to talk about that to a casual question like that. So that's how he sort of brushed off the question. In fact, Christine writes, this was not flippancy. How could he answer a casual question otherwise? We had noticed that when something disturbed him, after allowing himself to be troubled by it for a few minutes, his Shiva, Shiva seemed to end it. We knew that he had reminded himself of his true nature, in which everything of a disquieting nature was dissolved. How wonderful. He would allow himself to be disturbed by something for a few minutes. We can take that as a hint for our own life also. Something is disturbing us. All right, allow it to disturb us for a moment. This has happened, this is unfortunate, this is bad, this is... And then he would remind himself of his true nature. Shiva, Shiva. And everything disturbing, everything upsetting, everything wrong, everything disquieting gets dissolved in that. Shiva, Shiva. Set it aside. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Life is too short to get all worried about ladies teaching in my name. It's too short to worry about that. I have bigger fish to catch. I have bigger fish to fry, isn't it? I have bigger fish to fry. Shiva, Shiva. Bengali after. She also relates a very, very sweet incident. in New York once, they were walking along and they're a pitiful group that clung to Swamiji with pathetic tenacity. In the course of a walk, he had gathered up first one and then another. This ragged retinue returned with him to the house at 58th Street, which was the home of the Vedanta Society. Walking up the flight of steps leading to the front door, the one beside him thought, obviously it was Sister Christine walking with him, it seems. The one beside him thought, why does he attract such queer, abnormal people? Cast-offs and down and outs and these kind of people. Seeing Swamiji, they just started following him. They couldn't help it. And quick as a flash, Swamiji turned and answered the unspoken thought, you see, they are Shiva's demons. So beautiful. One more quote from a letter to Mrs. Sarah Bull, written on 11th April 1895. Mrs. Bull, Swamiji trusted Mrs. Bull's judgment, Sarah Bull's judgment, immensely, and considered her as a deeply spiritual woman. But sometimes she would venture to give Swamiji some advice. Like, Swamiji, you shouldn't get angry at these missionaries. You shouldn't get into fights with the missionary. Or, Swamiji, you have to hold yourself steady. Some kind of, I'm guessing by the kind of letters that he would write sometimes to her, pounding her into dust. So one such letter, there was he took up rooms in not the greatest neighborhood of New York, shall we say. It was kind of a red light district. And some of his people were saying, Swami, nobody's going to go there. Especially women, they're not going to go there. It's the wrong place. You have to get the right sort of people to come to you. And he was livid because they meant the right sort of people means the wealthy, cultured people. But Swamiji came for everyone. So he said the right sort of people is the people the Lord brings. And sure enough, the right sort of people came there because the Lord brought them all, and even the women came, and hundreds came and packed those rooms in that bad neighborhood. But then he goes into a kind of mood, which he would do sometimes in his letters, a mood of almost of ecstasy, and he writes like this: Thou art my right, thou my wrong, my Shiva. Lord, since a child I have taken refuge in thee. Thou wilt be with me in the tropics or at the poles, on the tops of mountains or in the depths of oceans. My stay, my guide in life, my refuge, my friend, my teacher, my God, my real self, thou wilt never leave me, never. I know it for sure. Sometimes I become weak, being alone and struggling against odds, my God, and I think of human help. Save thou me forever from these weaknesses, and may I never, never seek for help from any being but thee. So tremendous mood. We get these glimpses of his inner mood of just complete reliance on Shiva. Swami Vivekananda returned to India arrived on the 15th of January 1897 in Sri Lanka, and by the 25th January he came to Rameshwaram. Rameshwaram is one of the great Shiva temples, one of the great pilgrimage places. It's a vast temple with defies description. You have to see it to believe it. And as you pass through it and go through all the different levels and layers, and finally you come to the inner sanctum, and Lord Shiva there is worshipped only with Ganga water, Ganges water. But Ganga is thousands of miles away, thousands of kilometers away in North India. People carry that Ganga water all the way to Rameshwaram to worship Shiva with that Ganga water. So it's a very orthodox temple, and very much a temple emphasizing the ritualistic worship of Shiva. And of course only the priests are allowed to actually worship, and it's one of those traditional temples, and the power is undeniable. Go to one of these temples, you feel something. It's undeniable. Swami Vivekananda gave a talk at the Rameshwaram temple, and that talk later was inscribed in a plaque, and it's mounted there at the temple. Is it bronze or stone? I forget now.
It's stone, I think.
Stone,
Narendra bhai, the
stone plaque. Or,
I think it's stone.
okay, it's stone plaque
Yeah.
mounted there. These words. So this is I'm going to read this. Unless one is pure in body and mind, one's coming into a temple and worshipping Shiva is useless. The prayers of those that are pure in mind and body will be answered by Shiva, and those that are impure and yet try to teach religion to others will fail in the end. This is the gist of all worship, to be pure and to do good to others. He who sees Shiva in the poor, in the weak, and in the diseased really worships Shiva. And if he sees Shiva only in the image, his worship is but preliminary. He who has served and helped one poor man, seeing Shiva in him, without thinking of his caste or creed or race or anything, with him Shiva is more pleased than with the person who sees him only in temples. So here we get a taste of that message of Swami Vivekananda for the world, and especially for India. Shiva Jnani, Jiva Seva. Understand that the Jiva, the individual soul, is actually Shiva, is divine, and worship Shiva that way. Shiva Jnani, Jiva Seva. Serve humanity, knowing that actually human beings are but manifestations of the divine, and that serving them is actually worship. And so he puts it in a nice way there at Rameshwaram, the heart of Hindu orthodoxy. So amazing. And they put that on the wall there also. Beautiful. Amazing. So we won't have time for all the amazing stories, but we will have to mention Swami Vivekananda's pilgrimage to Amarnath. Now, Amarnath is a traditional temple, but no, it's not a traditional temple. It is a very holy temple, but it's not an ordinary temple. It's an enormous cave high in the Himalayas of Kashmir. And the image of Shiva there is not made of stone, it's made of ice. And it forms naturally every year, I guess by the water dripping from above, and it forms an ice stalagmite, which is worshipped as Lord Shiva. And the pilgrimage is made every year. There's a certain period during which one can make that pilgrimage, because most of the year it's covered with snow. And still today, that pilgrimage is done, and that temple is, Shiva still appears there. So it's a question whether he will continue to manifest there with the global warming, the climate change and all that, but for the present, that is still a pilgrimage that they make, and Swami Vivekananda made that pilgrimage. With Sister Nivedita, he brought her also to make the pilgrimage, which means that we have some pretty detailed descriptions of the pilgrimage, and it's wonderful to read some of those. There were many monks along who were making the pilgrimage, and Swami Vivekananda, of course, was among those monks. He was revered as among the greatest of the monks, and she writes how the monks, especially the more learned of the monks, swarmed about him at every halting place, filling his tent and remaining absorbed in conversation throughout the hours of daylight. The talk on their side, he told us afterwards, had been all of Shiva, and they had remonstrated with him seriously when he had insisted occasionally on drawing their attention to the world about them. And so they come through these tremendous scenes of beauty. The first day we camped in a pine wood. The next we had passed the snow line and pitched our tents beside a frozen river. That night the great campfire was made of juniper, and the next evening, at still greater heights, the servants had to wander many miles in search of this scanty fuel. At last, the regular pathway came to an end, and we had to scramble up and down, along goat paths on the face of steep declivities, till we reached the boulder-strewn gorge in which the cave of Amarnath was situated. As we ascended this, we had before us the snow peaks, covered with a white veil, newly fallen, and in the cave itself, in a niche never reached by sunlight, shone the great ice lingam that must have seemed, to the awestruck peasants who first came upon it, like the waiting presence of God. The Swami had observed every rite of the pilgrimage as he came along. He had told his beads, kept fast, and bathed in the ice-cold waters of 5 streams in succession, crossing the river gravels on our second day. And now, as he entered the cave, it seemed to him as if he saw Shiva made visible before him. Amidst the buzzing, swarming noise of the pilgrim crowd and the overhead fluttering of the pigeons, he knelt and prostrated 2 or 3 times, unnoticed. And then, afraid lest emotion might overcome him, he rose and silently withdrew. He said afterwards that in these brief moments he had received from Shiva the gift of Amar, not to die until he himself had willed it. In this way, possibly was defeated or fulfilled that presentiment which had haunted him from childhood, that he would meet with death in a Shiva temple amongst the mountains. So Swamiji had the tremendous experience of the darshan of Amarnath. Of course, he had observed all the traditional rites of that pilgrimage, and including the baths in 5 freezing cold rivers, and he had entered the cave completely naked, except for dressed only in a loincloth and his body covered in ash. And he didn't feel the cold at all. Afterwards, he felt it after the darshan. But in those few moments, he had received this boon from Lord Shiva, that we would give up his body at will. And so this is another clue why, when he left his body on July 4, we understand that he did so of his own free will. And he also loved it because up at those heights there could be no commercialism. At all the great pilgrimage sites, there's also a fair amount of commercial activity. The merchants take this opportunity to buy and to sell their goods, and the priests take the opportunity to make some money by cheating the pilgrims and all of that. There was none of that in this pilgrimage. So he was so overjoyed. And it's beautiful how Nivedita writes, the purity and whiteness of the ice pillar had startled and enwrapped him. The cavern had revealed itself to him as a secret of Kailas, and for the rest of his life he cherished the memory of how he had entered a mountain cave and come face to face there with the Lord himself. So when Swami Vivekananda returned to Bera Mutt, he was in a deeply meditative mood, and it was difficult to route. All the brother disciples were frightened because he was not talking with them. He was just staying in his room, meditating all the time. They were frightened that he might decide to give up his body. And so they send in his young disciple, Sharat Chandra. He was a householder, very much devoted to Swami Vivekananda, and we have many conversations recorded by him. And so they send him in saying, go, bring him out of this mood, chit-chat with him. So he writes how he comes to see Swamiji. And the disciple coming to Swamiji's room finds him sitting in Padmasana, the lotus posture, immersed in deep meditation. No smile on his face, no outward look to his eyes. He didn't greet the disciple. Seeing the disciple, he only said, "You have come, my son, sit," and lapsed into silence. And the disciple saw that in his eye, one of the blood vessels had broken. There was some red in the eye, which possibly had occurred when blood rushed to the head in Samadhi. You know, how is your eye red? How is it that your eye is red? The disciple asked. "That is nothing," said Swamiji, and was again silent. So the disciple was also getting worried. So he touched his feet and said, "Won't you relate to me what things you have seen at Amarnath?" And by touching his feet, it seems the tension was broken a little of his mood, and his attention was diverted a little, and then he said, "Since the darshan of Amarnath, I feel as if Shiva is sitting on my head, all the 24 hours and won't come down even a little. And then he goes on saying how he underwent these tremendous austerities both at Amarnath and then at the temple of Shiva Bhavani. And then he asked the disciple, go fix me some tobacco. Then the disciple starts to feel relieved. Swamiji's asking for a smoke. It means he's coming down. It tells him something of that experience of the pilgrimage. So it was at this time that Swamiji composed a few Sanskrit hymns. And we'll close with that. He composed a beautiful hymn to Shiva, called Shiva. We call it Shiva Stotram. It starts at Nikhila Bhuvana Janma. In this hymn, there's some beautiful lines which I'd just like to share with you. He also composed at that time a hymn to Divine Mother called Amba Stotram, which is also very deeply moving. Because though we've been talking about Swami Vivekananda and Shiva, but we find that there was also this other side of Swamiji, that he was utterly devoted to Divine Mother, to Kali. And so how do you explain these two things? Here he's just had this tremendous experience of Shiva, and after that he had tremendous experience of Divine Mother in Kshir Bhavani. So he seemed to hold both of these sides, managed to balance both of these aspects in a beautiful harmony and balance, because both were true for him. He would say that it's the mother who makes me do all this work. It's the mother who's guiding me. I trust her in everything I do, and yet Lord Shiva is sitting on my head and won't come down. So this line, Mama bhavatu bhavesmin bhasuro bhavabandha. May my luminous love fasten firm to him, to Shiva. This is the prayer that he's expressing in this beautiful hymn. May my love be luminous, and may it be ever attached to Lord Shiva. And he describes Shiva as being of the very embodiment of infinite love. Usually I didn't think of Shiva as being the embodiment of love. We think of him as the very essence of consciousness immersed in meditation, or this tremendous dance of creation and destruction, full of power, of the creative power. But of love, Swami Vivekananda had this experience of Shiva as being the very embodiment of love. Ashitila parirambha prema rupasya yasya pranayati hridi vishvam vyaja matram vibhutam. So he says that he says this embrace of Shiva, this close embrace, which is love itself. It's an embrace of infinite love, reveals within the heart the infinity of being and the falseness of the world. So this pranati hridi vishvam vyajamatram. It's just this world is just a temporary something, and it's the infinity of being which is revealed by Shiva's embrace of love. When he was approaching the end of his life, we find a steadily increasing detachment from everything, and he wrote this beautiful letter to Josephine MacLeod. I just read that line. I am very well mentally. I feel the rest of the soul more than that of the body. The battles are lost and won. I have bundled my things and am waiting for the great deliverer. Shiva, oh Shiva, carry my boat to the other shore. He's quoting a Hindi bhajan. Aba Shiva par karo meri nai. The Hindi bhajan, I wish I could hear someone sing it. But he's quoting this to Josephine MacLeod. Shiva, oh Shiva, carry my boat to the other shore. After all, Joe, I am only the boy who used to listen with rapt wonderment to the wonderful words of Ramakrishna under the banyan at Dakshineshwar. That is my true nature. Works and activities, doing good and so forth, are all superimpositions. Now I again hear his voice, the same old voice thrilling my soul. Bonds are breaking, love dying, work becoming tasteless. The glamour is off life. Only the voice of the Master calling. I come, Lord, I come. Let the dead bury the dead. Follow thou me. I come, my beloved Lord, I come. We chant the last verse of Shiva Stotra. Durita dalana daksham dakshajadatta dosham kalita kalikalankam kamrakaharakantam parahita karanaya pranavicheda sutkam natanayana niyuktam nilakantham namamaha natanayana niyuktam nilakantham namamaha natanayana niyuktam nilakantham namamaha. Him who destroys sin and removes the dark stain of our age, whose benign eyes watch over all who have surrendered to him, who joyously sacrifices himself for the good of others, whose throat is blue from drinking the poison intended for others. Him, lustrous as a white water lily, him I salute. Om Shanti.